It's something that has to happen. But good morning, everybody. It is 9:01 on the 1st of November of 2022. I cannot believe we are 11 months in, and we are back at Impact and Coffee for this month, and we're going to be celebrating 7 years in December. Oh my gosh! So um,
Oh.
we have a really great conversation this morning. Um, I just want to say, like, I know I look like I have a red light on. It's an orange light. I'm in Santa Clara right now with Lisa's family, and there's some Halloween decorations going on, which is pretty cool. And this orange light, and it's keeping me warm too because it's cold up here. So, so that's the purpose for like this lighting. It's not a Twitch channel. I'm not playing a video game or anything like that. Um, but it could be construed as such. So, but yeah, for those in the audience this morning, please introduce yourself in the chat, your name, your pronouns, and anything that you're grateful for this morning. It is Gratitude Tuesday. I know I'm grateful for family. I know folks who had jumped on before we hit the record button. We were talking about Dia de los Muertos and All Souls Day, of which that's what I'm celebrating today with Lisa's family up here in the Pueblos. So. Um, but yeah, please share anything that you're grateful for and for today, anything that's going on in your life. And I think we can start off with some announcements. So, Impact and Coffee, again, does first and third Tuesdays each month. There was a decision we made back in September from our community survey. We still have our Next Gen In grant. Last time we were at Impact and Coffee, we celebrated with one of our awardees at New Mexico Legal Aid. So they were doing some really great work. But know that we still have some extra funds for Next Gen In. You can email nextgenin@gmail.com for more information, or just ask me in the chat and we'll give you some more info on that one. So, um, oh yeah, and one more announcement. So we are looking for more volunteers for our planning committee. So I know we're talking to somebody later today, and so hoping to add a new person to our volunteer planning team capacity, and also just hoping that others will apply for that. If you subscribe to our newsletter, you can actually apply for that volunteer position at our email address, or you can just go to our link tree, which just serves as our website. Link trees are like awesome. So it's just Linktree /impact and coffee, and it'll go straight to all of our important links. You can check out, like, you can subscribe to our email address, you can check out like our Facebook page, and you can sign up to be a volunteer with Impact and Coffee, or you can actually apply for Next Gen In there as well. So lots of important stuff at that site. So good to see some familiar faces again. And you know what? I will just give a big thank you to our Impact and Coffee team. Jermaine is on the call. I know she might be in a meeting right now, but she always helps us with this Zoom link. So appreciate you, Jermaine, and as well to Denise and Sarah for helping us out as well, being on our planning team, doing some cool stuff for us. So without further ado, I'm going to pass it over to Bonnie. Bonnie, thank you. It's great to see you always, and good morning from Virginia, I think. And is there anything that you're really
Yeah,
grateful for this morning?
thank you. I'm always welcome and just happy to celebrate Dia de los Muertos, especially this year because my family has relocated to Roanoke, Virginia, and so the three of us will be together this year, which hasn't happened in quite a few. So I'm really thankful for that.
That's awesome. I will ask you this first question. Tell us a little bit about building beloved communities. What is that? What is it that it does? And let's just launch off from there.
Sure, thank you. I'm really excited to be here. And Building Beloved Communities did start in Albuquerque, New Mexico. So I'm really proud of that. And it all started when I was in corporate America and I was working for a healthcare company, and there was a merger and I was laid off. And because of that, I kind of had some time to figure out what I really wanted to do professionally. And so I decided to work as a consultant in the nonprofit sector specifically. And so we are a business consultant firm, but what sets us apart is that we really focus on community centered business solutions. And so what that looks like is helping the nonprofit as much as we can based on their self identified needs and maybe digging a little deeper, rooting through those systemic issues and seeing if we can make a more equitable workplace. And then always, if we work with small businesses, because again, we are a business consulting firm, we really work with aligning them with nonprofits in their community so that they can do give back components or really work on, how can they really align and support a nonprofit of their choice in a sustainable way. So those are the types of things. And, of course, we do executive coaching too, because we want to make sure that the leaders of tomorrow and the future who want to level up in the nonprofit sector or make the jump to the nonprofit sector are fully prepared. So we do a lot of work, nonprofit sector, small businesses, and individuals. Yeah,
You,
and so that's pretty much how it started.
yeah. Well, you mentioned getting out of out of corporate work. Like, could you dig more into that? What really led you to like
Yeah.
jump into the nonprofit sector, or at least supporting nonprofit organizations specifically?
Sure. Early in my healthcare career, I worked for a large nonprofit, healthcare nonprofit, and that was for 7 years and kind of worked my way through that. And then I went to the for-profit side and worked there. And I called it like that, like sort of leading edge where I was in community engagement. So I was the one who like wrote the checks, so to speak. And so it was kind of like a softer transition. And then I went into, more contracting and things like that. But what really did it was in the for-profit entity that I worked, the last one I worked for, like I said, it was in healthcare and it was for providers. They were making decisions in the boardroom that were definitely cost cutting oriented, but they stopped creating appointments for Medicaid recipients and started increasing appointment slots for those that were in the Medicare Advantage or private pay. And I kept saying stuff, and it just because it was not obviously it's not right, like I would very clearly draw the line to them, like, you are barring access to our our most vulnerable populations, and you're contributing to the problem and of inequity and an inability to access healthcare. And so they just didn't listen, and I was really fed up. So my conscience was very achy, and as soon as that merger happened, I knew I was going to be one of the first to be let go, honestly, because I was a troublemaker and I'm proud of it. I'm proud to be able to bring voice to these inequities. And so anyway, that's kind of how it happened. So I was working, so again, the nonprofit experience, being on the board of a few grassroots nonprofit organizations, and I just decided that I really needed to do something. And so one of the things, how I named the company, was Dr. Martin Luther King's 1967 Christmas Eve speech, where he referenced a beloved community. And it's literally a community that the King Foundation further defined as one without poverty, racism, bigotry, homelessness. And I read that and I'm like, how can I, as a person with business skills, help and be a part of that? And so that's kind of how it formed.
That's awesome. I appreciate that. Um,
Mm,
you mentioned, what's going on like in the larger kind of healthcare, public health
yeah,
kind of fields. Like that's still going on to this day, you know,
yeah,
sadly, unfortunately. And so it's glad to hear that you were fighting it. But is there, kind of veer off topic a little bit, but is there anything that you would
sure.
like prescribe to like folks who are working in that industry still, like to continue the fight or keep going or get out, like get out as fast as you can? Or
Yeah, right. I would say definitely work on creating an advocacy component to your work. Um, and, really, we can't change healthcare overall, big level, until we have policy change and legal change in our country. And I think that that's really key. And as someone who went to undergrad at the University of British Columbia, I was a person who accessed socialized medicine, and it was incredible. And it was local. I had to pay a whole $200 a year to access their medical system because I was a foreigner and I could access it anytime and with no copays and very reasonable medication and quite fast turnaround times. So I'm all for it because I've experienced it. Um, However, I think real change, especially how we take care of our elders in this country, is there's such huge gaps. Really working in that space, I would start directing attention toward. Of course, the baby boomers are starting to retire, and they're living longer because of modern medicine. And so really focusing the energy on how we're going to respectfully take care of our elders, how to allow them to age in place if they choose so, and then how can we afford to pay if they need more sophisticated medical care that we can't provide at home. How are we going to do that? And I think that that's crucial, and that's going to be something very interesting, especially for women, because most of the care falls on women, and we may be in the sandwich generation, so we may be raising children and we may be taking care of our parents or our spouse's parents and vice versa. So thinking about that, if you think there's a labor shortage now.
Yeah, if you think there's a labor shortage now, oh my gosh. Um,
Yeah,
Shifting a little bit, so we're gonna, um, obviously we're still kind of in the pandemic. I know Joe Biden said like
yeah,
it's over, but I'm like, but 400 people are still dying a day.
yeah,
What are some ways?
yeah,
I
that's,
know I laugh. It's still hard. If we're not laughing,
yeah,
um, what
I
are some
know.
ways? Yeah. What are some ways in which y'all like had to adapt in the last couple years, and like what were some of your biggest challenges? One, and then two, like what did you work? How did you work to adapt to those challenges?
Sure. I think so. In preparation for my move, I took Building Beloved Communities to a virtual workspace. So even if I had a meeting with someone in Albuquerque, I still met with them through Zoom, because sometimes you know how long it takes to go get coffee, right? so, um, so I really wanted to start that. So the impact on the business itself wasn't, but the things that have come out of the pandemic have, I mean, if we're going to look for the silver lining, right? It's really a lot of the work that I do for some nonprofits recently has been reviewing their hiring and recruitment retention strategies and employee handbooks through an equity lens. So it's looking at parity, wage compensation matrices to compare to skill set versus like the individual per se, and really looking at posting wages and making sure that it's in the job description and in the actual posting for the organization. And I've been doing some really cool work with not necessarily like trans affirming policies. Like that was something I recently did. An organization wanted to really work on their language and education, in Pittsburgh, actually. And so they really wanted a transgender affirming policy stating, we will respect your pronouns. We don't need like legal documentation. You just tell us, we will what to put on your name badge, essentially, and what pronouns you want us to use. And we're open and accepting of all of our employees, and really creating training around that as well on how to engage the workforce differently so that they can really foster that environment of welcome and just a good workplace. Yeah,
Yeah, I think yeah, even just that specific kind of example of like hiring practice. I know it's taken a long time for nonprofits just to list the salary range on a
yeah,
yeah, on any like call for employment, and that's just one aspect of it, right? So it's like
yeah,
what other practices can nonprofits kind of really dig into when it comes to like equitable hiring and like even just pay equity,
yeah,
thinking through that.
yeah. Oh my goodness. So this is it's funny because it's new, but it's not new. Is remote work policies. So it's like a big thing, right? So fully remote workforce versus a hybrid remote workforce, especially for those that do direct care services. And then, so like it's twofold, right? As we all know in the nonprofit world, right? So business is one side, but nonprofit is like, but is it also equitable to the clients that we're serving? Can they comfortably do a Zoom call? Do they have access to high speed internet, or is a phone call better? Or, all of these other things that you have to consider. So yes is the recipient, yes is the nonprofit, and then yes is like overall elevating the connectivity of the nonprofit. Like, do we need to upgrade? What does that look like? Do your systems work? What do you need to provide for your employees is something else if needed. And so these are some other, ideas and policies that we had to kind of really look at and investigate. But I would say really the thing that I've been doing a lot of is, we understand like the compensation analysis, right, for like an executive director, but doing this for all levels of the organization to your frontline staff that do, I mean, everything, like every single position that you pay someone for, even your even independent contractors is key. And then, listing out a career pathway. So if you want to get additional certifications or pay, and really insisting that all employees, no matter what language they speak, get a shift differential for language, the ability to speak a different language, Spanish, Dene, whatever. Like, make sure that it's in there and it's equitable, because there is so much uncompensated pay for individuals who are bilingual. And so instead of fussing and figuring that out, just pay them for it. you know. And then the other thing is, as different organizations have been sharing, like the Race to Lead survey and all these other things, is really trying to ensure that not only women, but women of color are getting paid more equitably compared to their white male counterparts. And it's the disparities there in nonprofits. We all know it's there, and now there's more of a need and trend to want to address it, which I'm really proud of. And so I'm glad that those nonprofits are doing the work, because the funders are starting to pay for the work, which is great. I mean, that's all key, right? So the funders are starting to pay for equity work, and what we kind of used to call like the technical assistance, but basically giving money to fortify the nonprofit to do the work that they do, whether it looks like paying for QuickBooks or keeping the lights on, or investing in equity and pay structures, and not really caring if 33.2% goes to admin and the rest goes to direct services. So I do see the change, and I want to keep encouraging others to have those conversations with their funders.
Yeah, that's really great. I really appreciate that. You mentioned like the funders, and I know like there aren't any funders on this call, thankfully. But what are funders always want us to collaborate, but and I always think that's
Yeah,
a little bit short-sighted sometimes, which it's always interesting to see
sure.
funders say like you need to partner with these people. I'm like, but do you understand like what our relationships really are out here? But aside from that though,
Yeah,
speaking of partnerships, like can you talk a little bit about like meaningful partnerships you've had either with your clientele or with like other organizations that are very similar to yours or doing similar work in your area or region or even here in New Mexico that have like bolstered that capacity to do equity work, to do their business a lot
yeah,
better, to do, to serve their communities a lot better, more effectively.
yeah. I think the most successful partnerships I've seen are in the housing industry, like the housing sector, because of the large federal funds, and it's impossible for one organization to do it themselves. So I've seen a lot of great work with collaboration and partnerships in that particular sector. That come to mind is the Dream Tree Project in Taos. Um, what makes them successful is that they have dedicated staff and staff time to these partnerships. Like, that's what makes it successful. And being able to, quote unquote, wrangle the chickens, right? To be able to get everybody in alignment on the same page, working towards the same goal with, and measuring everything and being able to report it back. And so usually they're the primary I've seen, because they have that time, and then they can effectively work with their other partners in the community and in the state. So I would say that's one. I've also seen great collaboration in the sexual assault services field, where there is individuals and groups that rely on infrastructure. So NMC SAP, right? They or SAS is where they have, that's New Mexico, I can't remember what it stands for, but they provide general infrastructure, and then they have like they're like the go-to place where people can ask resources questions, and then they can, go from there. And then as we get more and more rural, there are like smaller organizations that can work together, like coverage wise, right? So geographically or time, like you close at this time, that's when I open my doors. So it's more of a coverage than anything. And then, of course, different segmentations where, you may serve individuals recently released from incarceration that are male identifying and you are female identifying in families. And then how can the two interact? So I've seen that. And again, that's in more of the housing sector. So those are some really great examples. But I think I always like lead with that, mindset of abundance, is that there is more than enough work for all of us. Like truly, truly, there is. And pushing away from that scarcity mindset and having those meaningful conversations with funders to say, we need more funds for this because this collaboration is expensive and here's why. I've seen people have successful conversations that way, and some not. I mean, we'll be honest, and some not. But the more funders hear it, I think the more they're willing to reconsider their fund allocation.
Yeah, relationships are expensive, y'all.
Yeah, yeah, they are for sure.
Yeah. It's more than just like wine and dine. It's like, how do you have I always think about whenever collaboration, yeah, like I need to be wine and dine if I'm gonna be collaborated with. So I'm just kidding. Just saying. Well, I already do that. It's and the funny thing is I don't really drink, so yeah, I think you just have to give me food and that pretty much should solve like a lot of issues. So um but
Right, right.
right, like so on that note, like it is expensive to fund collaboration. Like and some of the pieces around that, it's
Yeah,
like, paying people to go to the meetings, like and sometimes like
yeah,
collaborative efforts are done by people that are already in either executive roles or director roles within an organization, and so you're asking them to do something on top of their nine
right.
to five job already, which isn't necessarily 9 to 5. It's like 9 to 9, a 12-hour shift sometimes for non.
Yeah, right.
Yeah. Um, so what are some, let's dig into that. Like, what are some things that you would ask a funder to like, and I know we're going off on a little tangent here, but we might as well. What are some things that you would
That's
actually
okay.
ask a funder to do, like to fund and resource in a collaborative kind of setting where it's like, yeah, like these are this is that's that to not fund that is more exploitative than it is not to. And so how can we, what are in your viewpoint, what do you suggest for folks, or what do you suggest for funders, and also just for our audience out there maybe doing some collaborative work out there, what are some things that you would
Yeah.
suggest funding for? So
I've seen success with each organization. So if there's two organizations, they each request for the time. So each asks for a half time FTE. So if there's four, they each ask for a quarter, right? Um, with one person, with the lead being like the organization where they're housed under. So they can ask for, a little like 52% or 55% or whatever. Um, and then, so in like the for-profit world, they're called directors of strategic partnerships or collaboration. Like that's what they're called. They literally have a full-time person who does this for-profit entities. And that is what nonprofits need, is that exactly that, right? And so being able to call it or have the language around, strategic partner collaboration or funding, like the results, like getting out the funding. So like metric deliverables, having all of these words kind of tied in together and in the name. So like really drawing the line, like the dotted line for the funder to say, we need a person that organizes all of this, gets you all the information that you need, and make sure that all of our partners are on track to hit those metrics or to have the greatest and highest good for the population that we're serving. And like, hard stop. And they also need a computer. Yeah. So those are those are my like tips, is asking for that specifically. And then the last part is when we do fundraising, asking for your funders that specific ask. Like, we need a business manager. We need a person who can do this sort of work, and they will be able to, you know, make sure our collaboration with XYZ partnership works out. They'll be able to measure our success, and they'll be able to like create our annual report or whatever the case may be, whatever it is that you want them to do. I think is also very crucial. Being able to ask your donor base for that is hard, and it's the effects are surprising. And sometimes you get random volunteers, and I know there's the volunteer paid, debate all the time, but having that volunteer person be able to at least show interest, and maybe that's not what they do, but maybe they can show up in another way, but you never would have found them if you hadn't have asked. So that's always something that I like to talk about sometimes.
Yeah. Oh yeah. Well, the debate about like paid and volunteer is raged on for many years, and
Yeah,
yeah, and
yeah,
it always depends, right? It always depends on who's willing, what are people willing to give, what are they willing to negotiate, and then you
yeah.
also need, obviously you want to make sure that people consent to that as well. Like that's something that's super important and critical. Um,
Right,
yeah.
right.
You talked about fundraising, and I think fundraising has definitely shifted in the last couple of years, right? So it's more than just hosting an
Yeah,
event like a rubber chicken dinner, or and
yeah,
showing a
yeah.
sad video and making people cry. And then I think in a lot of ways that's still kind of the case. But what are some ways that you've seen people adapt to fundraising in the last couple of years that's been really successful for folks?
Yeah, I really feel honesty. Like, that's been really great. Like, being authentic, like being able to say we didn't hit our metrics, or we didn't um reach the amount of folks that we wanted to. And here's why, and here's how you can help solve that, right? And that's one thing, is being completely authentic. And you know also, it's okay to talk about your aspirational projects, right? Like, we find that we are constantly running into this, and we would like it to be funded, but there are no grants available, and we don't have the resources to do it. And so we're asking you, as our collectively vested, interested folks, can you please help us? So that's something else to consider, is really being honest about that. I think another thing that I've noticed is that people have been really leaning into the direct ask a little bit more, and also investing in training all of their staff, so that the fundraising doesn't rely only on the board, only on the executive director, but like all of the frontline staff to have that like speech, or that stump speech, elevator pitch, to be able to represent the organization and have that intelligent ask, like, hey, we're looking for funding for something specific. Or did you know, if you donate $257, that is equal to one home care visit that's full service, that kind of thing. Just having those things, and then the technology and QR codes and the availability of handing out a flyer has really changed. Like, we're on Venmo, we're on Cash App, we're on this, that, and the other, and being able to just scan here to donate. And it's so easy. Like, I've in the last couple of years, I realized I'm on a lot of auto donate monthly giving campaigns for like Planned Parenthood and all these other things. But then the smart piece is capturing those donors and asking for the reoccurring monthly donation, and continuously building that relationship. Like, we all know this part, right? Like, build them into an advocate, like into like someone who embodies what you want to do, and continue to grow them into that incredible voice for your organization as well. So I think that's key. And then finding resources to thank them in ways they wish to be thanked. Some people like to be thanked publicly. Others, just a tour of the facility. Sometimes it's just time with the staff. So whatever that looks like, and it's hard and it takes time, but technology has really started to give us some really cool and innovative tools that I hadn't seen recently. Yeah.
That's really cool. I just looked at the clock and it's 9:31. I wanted to open up to questions from the audience and just see if there are some things that folks wanted to ask of you, and just invite anyone to unmute and, um, while we have Bonnie here, to ask away. I'm also comfortable in calling on people.
I'll go. This is Mariah. Good morning. I am just so excited to see you and to hear some updates, because I know that the transition out of New Mexico was new for you, and you're in such a different space from where you first started, but the needs are everywhere, right? And you're making incredible connections everywhere. How are you sort of working across the board? What do you think is sort of your business model that can explain to people how you start with nonprofit consulting, but you also work with for-profit businesses for the betterment of both? Does that make
Yeah.
sense? Yeah.
Yeah. So I'll back. I feel like that's a two-part question. So one thing I've noticed and that I always want to, talk about is I feel like in New Mexico compared to Virginia, I'll just compare these two states specifically. They're The nonprofit sector in New Mexico is like a decade ahead of Virginia. Like they're like 10 years behind, right? But the for-profit side of Virginia is like 10 years ahead of New Mexico, right? So using these two spaces is very interesting. And they are, I mean, there's all kinds of reasons, and we know why. Like, there's a lot of systemic issues in trading and old money, and I mean, there's a whole reason for all of this. But the interesting part is when I bring things that some nonprofits have been doing in New Mexico for a while to them, it's really innovative, and also they are so advanced in different parts that they are really ready to start community giving and volunteer time off programs and like employee centered giving programs, like where their base of employees get to decide how they want to help, and do they want to do money or time or both, and how can they have real impact. So like really deep ways, because now they have the profit and the funding, right? So that really helped. And I would say that when I'm explaining what I do, I really go back to community centered business solutions, where if you're for profit, nonprofit, or an individual, we streamline everything so that you can spend the time doing what you do best. And if you're a for profit entity, how can you deeply connect with the nonprofit sector so as a community, we can all rise together? So that's kind of how I explain it. And then people, as soon as I say that, they like, oh, I'm on board. So in my dream world, I would love to have a universal definition of community centered business solutions. Until that becomes like everyday speech, I think there'll be some little definition and context and conversation around it. But eventually I want that to be an everyday term. And I want there to be whole departments dedicated to this in different organizations across the nation, for sure.
Thank you. Yeah, I really love that, because I think traditionally we hear like something like public-private partnerships, but what you're talking about is much deeper than that and can have such a broader impact. So thank you for that, Bon.
Thank you. Nice to see you or hear from you as well.
You too.
Thanks, Mariah. Anyone else in our audience want to share a question or just jump in with a comment? Or like, I know Sephora's out there.
This is Rita with the Grant Plant. Great to see you, Robert.
Good to see you too.
And Bonnie, thank you so much. I love the trend that I hope is permanent of equity, right, in real life terms. And part for me, what will make that work is in partnership with the funder community.
Yeah.
Instead of being afraid to talk with them about real issues and how to make systems better, we just don't say anything, right? And we just try to follow the dollars because it's about sustainability too. So, but I love the constant conversations and reminders and the accountability that our communities are trying to pull off to make such an equitable system work so much better and efficiently. So thank you for sharing. And Robert, thank you for everything you do.
Thanks.
Sure. One of the things that I've noticed is if a nonprofit is looking for corporate sponsorship, a really great way to open the door to that is first find, do the research, find one that's in alignment with your values and your mission and the work that you do. But you can easily start the conversation with, that the work that you're doing right now for diversity, equity, and inclusion. And they're like, oh yeah, like I know exactly what you're talking about. We need that for our nonprofit, and we need sponsorship to make that happen in our nonprofit. And they immediately understand it. Like I'm so surprised and impressed that they just get it. And they're like, oh yeah, you really need that. And that's expensive. And that took time and that took work. And I get that you need resources for that. And some are really interested to step up. So just a pro tip for other people that are interested in looking at corporate sponsorship for your diversity, equity, and inclusion. And I always put justice on the end of that work.
Yeah, I hope that's something that continues too. But I know, like, on so many levels, like post-civil rights, we are experiencing what a lot of anti-racism practitioners, DEI practitioners, and the like are experiencing called retrenchment, which colloquially is known as like white lash. It's not just it's not just the reaction to having a black president; it's the reaction to having all these like policies that have helped so many people. I know we saw that with Roe versus Wade falling this year.
Yeah.
Affirmative action is now being tossed out for something for next year, and there's some really interesting conversations happening right now in terms of race, obviously across the board, and so. And that goes along with every ism that's happening as well. So it's something to consider, and something that we don't go backward for or retrench anymore. Yeah, it's complicated, but I hope that that's still the case, and I hope that there's more funding for it. we'll see.
Yeah, same.
Any other questions out there?
I have one. So Bonnie, what do you see as the biggest challenge for nonprofits right now?
Way to ask like a super easy question. Really, truly though, I think it's a good question. It depends on the size and who they're serving, right? So large federally funded nonprofits with an exponential need, right? So you have funds, but you will always have you will never run out of people to serve that's federally funded. I think their biggest issue right now is internal systems, like really being able to handle all of the reporting and all of the staff and all of the HR things that come with staff and the hiring, recruitment, and retention. Smaller nonprofits that are not small in funding, but small in employee footprint, right? So, smaller in that regard, with a, fairly stable, with a need and I always to say never ending need, right? Is I think their issue is the never gonna applies, right? So these are folks that are, we talk about the shrinking workforce, right? But we have so many people who will never apply because they are working in different places. They're cobbling together side hustles. We're seeing a rise in entrepreneurship. So I would say you're like the mid-sized nonprofits are going to suffer the most in the, in the available pool nationwide, even if they're willing to recruit outside of the state and, nationwide, there's just people are leaving the workforce for various reasons, and entrepreneurship is one of them. The highest we've ever seen, ever. And then I would say the other nonprofits that are, kind of all over the place. What I see struggle, where I see the most struggle, or where I get hired for at least the most, is for HR, in the sense of not only recruiting, but being able to really create a wonderful work environment, because the work that you do is so, stressful, and it really like takes a lot out of you emotionally, and being on the front lines or just in different places. So it's really having these nonprofits that are investing in the wraparound care of their employees. Like, is it a great place to work? Do you have enough mental health days? Do you have like the supports that you need? And as we, the employer, are we providing all of those things? And I think that that's the struggle, is keeping that environment um, so wonderful and so like filled with reward, in both financial, and I really mean financial, and the work that you do, but being able to make sure that that the employees can maintain that balance of a healthy life and work. So mostly HR stuff. But that's what I've been getting hired for. There, I'm sure there's tons of of other things, but I just don't see it because I'm in my little bubble.
Well, Jade put in the chat that finding qualified staff
Yeah.
is a challenge, and nationally, the nonprofits are facing a workforce shortage.
Yeah.
And I think we're challenged on multiple levels, because it's hard to pay a competitive salary.
Yeah.
And for smaller organizations, it's very difficult to provide competitive benefits.
Yeah.
It's just so expensive.
I agree. It's difficult. And it's always that, you're right. It's that balance of like, can I provide XYZ thing to recruit XYZ person so that I can grow or increase the capacity of the organization, right? So I think something that I saw that I thought was great was the hiring manager asked the employee what benefits they wanted. I thought that was a very interesting approach, and I love it. And now I'm doing it as like a business owner, right? And so the result of that conversation was, I don't need health insurance because I am covered. I would really like it if you paid for a cell phone, like my monthly cell phone bill. And they were like ecstatic. And the employer, the nonprofit employer, never would have thought to have that as a benefit, and they just never would have thought of it. And sometimes it's really simple stuff, but you're right, overall it's huge. It's a huge problem. And yes, I agree that finding qualified strong staff is brutal right now. It's brutal.
Thanks for answering a tough question.
No problem. Or my best attempt anyway.
Yeah, it's a tough question. Thanks, Sephora.
Yeah.
Um, yeah, all yes to all of that. I think um, uh, let me just make one more round of one more ask for any questions from the audience, and if there's anybody out there that has a comment for Bonnie or anything like that, this is just invite y'all into the space. This is a good time to do it, and because I know it's about 9:46, and time really flies when you're having fun and having good. Yeah. I was gonna say, Jade, if there's anything that you want to unpack with that comment that you mentioned in the chat about your biggest challenge about hiring qualified staff, you're welcome to be on the floor and comment away or ask any questions.
Oh, thank you for that opportunity, Robert. No. There's nothing I need to unpack other than we're hiring, and there's a post on LinkedIn and on Indeed if anybody's interested or knows a wonderful administrative manager who might be interested. But yeah, I mean, Bonnie nailed it as always. And I have a meeting today with my executive committee, and it's strictly about human resources. And the benefits that we offer are really wonderful, I think, and go above and beyond any, for-profit or nonprofit setting, maybe outside of Google. But yeah, the one thing I'm definitely realizing is that there are such nuanced HR issues that I don't feel qualified to address, medical leave and, weird behaviors and, infighting among staff. And I mean, stuff I've never seen before. I just think everybody's on edge and nobody's at their best, and everyone needs a little more grace. And we took a great training as a team earlier this year, the Brene Brown Dare to Lead program.
Yeah.
And that was, I think, really wonderful for us. But, when things get tense and difficult, it's like, man, I really wish we had an HR expert that could clarify our way forward in some of these hard things. So I don't. And so I'm meeting with my executive committee, who's like a lawyer and a student and, a mishmash of people. And hopefully we come up with something good today. So it's on my mind.
Thanks, Jade. Appreciate that.
Thanks for letting me share.
Yeah, absolutely. I wish we would change the term human resources to something a little bit less Toby Flenderson. If they watch The Office, you know what I'm talking about. So, it's like human resources sounds like it's so extractive. And it also doesn't necessarily mean that the position is actually for people or for human beings. Essentially, it's like it keeps the status quo essentially for a lot of folks, for a lot of organizations. So I think redefining or revisioning that role, especially, it's like, oh, if it really is about providing, or creating a supportive atmosphere for folks, I think that's something that would be real, it should be in the name, right? Rather than human resources, it's like, oh, are you mining for people? People aren't, things that you pick up off the street, or we have feelings and emotions and things going on, and it's like, and I've always found that human resources department are not necessarily supportive of any of those things, and that's exactly what we're seeing right now. I'm seeing, human resources comes from slavery. Yes. Yes. Yeah, NPQ has a really great few things on that. So, and that's another thing we need to unpack as well. It's like, how does white supremacy culture show up in our hiring, in our human resources, in our organizations, in our organizational culture, and say it.
Yeah, exactly. And the joke in corporate America is human resources is there for the corporation. They are not there for you.
Mm-hmm.
Hard stop. And so in nonprofit world, there is a shift, and it's like organizational behavior. And I think that's a little better, but not completely there, right? But it's like organizational responsibility is probably something that I would go with if I could rename.
Yeah, totally.
Yeah.
Bonnie,
it should be there for the people.
Bonnie, is there anything that you wanted to before I ask our last question? What is there anything you wanted to share with your audience that you feel has been really that you want to brag about? Anything successful you want to brag about, like in the last couple of years for yourself or for your organization? Or
Yeah, I think so in 20 at the end of 2021, well, I'll start like in New Mexico. So Mariah Harrison was actually my first subcontractor ever, and Sephora Nefish was one of the first because I'm a member of New Mexico Thrives. She made a referral, quite a few referrals to some really wonderful nonprofits, and so these individuals have just been saying my name and my business's name in roomfuls of opportunity. So I just wanted to thank them for that, and so have you, Robert. And I feel like we have grown, and now I'm a team of two. So Shannon Dominguez works for us full time, and well, she's my coworker. And then hopefully next year, our plan is to add one more person to our team. So we'll be a dynamic team of three. That's my hope, and we'll see how that goes. And I will. You heard it here first. Rumor has it that they will be a fellow New Mexican. So I don't know. We'll see how that goes.
that's awesome. Appreciate it. And it's really great to see you all grow and be successful.
Thank you.
Is there last question? So knowing our conversation today and knowing the folks on the call, is there anything our community can do for you today?
Sure, I have a gift for you, and then I'll have my ask. So one of the things that I do is I work with the grantstation.com, and they're a fabulous organization that it's a database for grants, and it helps you keep track of things. And their annual membership is $695. But if you email me and I put my contact information in the chat, I'm a wholesaler for them, so I can give you access for $95 for a full year. So if you're interested in that, please let me know. I'd love to work with you on that. It's really easy. And that's my mini gift. And also, if you ever want to have a free consultation with me anytime, the link is also there in the chat. You can schedule 30 minutes to talk about what's bothering you, any barrier that I can help you overcome, or just listen. I can just listen as well. I'm good at that. So please feel free to book time with me so we can get to know each other, or I can assist in some way. And I think the thing that I would love from each of you is click on my quote unquote link tree. It's not a real link tree. It's like a generic version. But if you click on it, you can download my contact card. So please download my contact card and go to my website, follow us on socials, and just be our digital friends. I think that would be super helpful. And if you know of anyone in the nonprofit world that needs anything, we are generalists. We are nonprofit generalists. So we have people and subcontractors that have expertise in just about any issue you have come across in nonprofits, from funding to HR to computer systems. So just give us a call if you know someone who needs our help.
That's awesome. Thanks, Bonnie. And I reposted your contact information in the chat once more. I think that's going to do it for Impact and Coffee today. Bonnie, big, warm round of applause for Bonnie Chavez today. Thank you so much for joining us from Virginia. And you know what? We will have Impact and Coffee in a couple weeks. So November 15th will be our next Impact and Coffee. So keep an eye out for who that's going to be and the Zoom link and all that good stuff. And just keep in mind too, we are if you know anyone that wants to speak, there is I'm going to leave our link tree in the chat, so we'll do that really quick. So people have it. Link tree, Impact and Coffee. And folks can find out any information we have. You can volunteer to speak. You can volunteer to volunteer, and also apply for the Next Gen Award there too. So check it out, and we'll see everybody on November 15th. I hope everyone has a really great rest of your Tuesday. Yeah, and may all your lights be green. We'll see you soon, y'all. Thanks and take care.
Bye, everybody.